Being a hero is a tough business. It's not just the constant danger or terrifying risks, there's the matter of the incredibly difficult challenges a hero must face in their quest for justice, peace, or whatever epic nonsense they're tasked with the pursuit of. It's a lifestyle that requires steely nerves, tremendous expertise, and not a small amount of good luck. But not everyone is born with a heaping helping of heroism, and sometimes it's the ordinary schmucks on whom it falls to restore the balance of the universe. And while we celebrate those who do more with less, there's also a case for calling out those who do decidedly less with less. And it's those blunderers that find themselves on this list. Here are the 7 most incompetent protagonists unlucky enough to ever headline a video game. Alex Mercer is a huge mess. From the very beginning of Prototype, he's not only a terrible human being, but a truly Omega-level screw-up. He's not only responsible for refining a deadly virus and weaponizing it for an evil pharmaceutical company, he then unleashes said extremely contagious virus when the company decides to shut his program down. But that's only the tip of Mercer's massive, genocidal iceberg of incompetence. While the first outbreak he triggers is fairly localized, he enables a proper massive epidemic when he frees Elizabeth Green, a host for the virus, who unleashes it on New York City. During the process of piecing together his fragmented memories, a process that involves not just a stupendous amount of murder, but the actual physical consumption of countless human beings, Mercer manages to not only annihilate hundreds of his former colleagues and slaughter countless military personnel, but he also butchers his ex-girlfriend. What a sweetheart. At first blush, Edge seems like the archetypal video game hero. He's bold, has a strong moral compass, and has been specially trained to be a spacefaring, alien-blasting badass. He even has the perfect name for an action hero, immediately letting us know he's a loose cannon who plays by his own rules. Unfortunately, no part of his extensive military training imparted a strong sense of judgment, and his brash attitude gets him into trouble far more than it gets him out of it. While diving headfirst into danger is the sort of thing we expect from our action hero leading men, in Edge's case, it has some truly devastating consequences. Case in point, when Edge and his crew find themselves at the mercy of some shady government types, his subpar decision-making leads to a horrifying sequence of events, the result of which is a cataclysm that, well, annihilates the entire Earth. Or an Earth, at least, because Star Ocean's story is kind of tricky. However you spin it though, it still means the fiery immolation of billions upon billions of innocent people. We'll pop that one down in the mistake column, shall we? Noir cinema has a long tradition of putting conflicted, challenging characters in its leading roles, and while a complicated hero can add depth and make a narrative more relatable, in the case of LA Noir's Cole Phelps, it mostly made us just want to unplug the mouse. Phelps seems innocuous at first, until his backstory starts to unravel and the true depths of his arrogance and incompetence are revealed. During his time in Japan during World War II, Phelps developed a reputation for being bad luck for the men he served with. His obsessive personality resulted in him leading his unit into a devastating ambush, and later attempting to force them to execute wounded civilians to put them out of their misery. Appropriately enough, Phelps brings his legacy of bad decisions back to the LAPD, where he ends up arresting a string of innocent suspects in the Black Dahlia murders. But he's not satisfied with just ruining strangers' lives. During his flailing attempts to bust up a drug ring, the married Phelps starts an affair with a jazz singer and ends up publicly disgraced, estranged from his wife, and demoted. While he is somewhat redeemed by his heroic actions at the end of the game, Phelps mostly stands out for being a great example of how cops shouldn't behave: less protect and serve, more shout at and bludgeon.
I got better things to do than argue the rub with you.
Like many of the sad sacks on our list, Tails comes to us with the best of intentions. He wants nothing more than to save the day alongside the world's most famous hedgehog. Unfortunately for Tails, however, the world doesn't run on good intentions. It's tempting to give Tails a pass because he's had a tough ride, mocked as he is by the other anthropomorphic animals for his twin tail and shy disposition. But all that goodwill goes straight out of the window anytime you're unlucky enough to be player 2 and find yourself desperately struggling to keep pace with the blue blur. Those twin tails might be good for levitating out of trouble, but they're no help keeping you on screen when Sonic goes blasting around a stage, soaking up golden rings and careening off ramps. But it's not just playing as him that makes Tails such a bummer. Even as an AI sidekick, Tails is woefully inept, slamming into bombs, triggering elevators before you're ready, and destroying crumbling platforms before you can leap on them. Seemingly the only time Tails is fast enough to keep up with you is when he's trolling you. And sometimes, apparently, he pilots a plane directly into an oncoming bomb and rides the shattered Hulk all the way to the ground to die horribly in the flaming wreckage. What a goofball. More unlovable schlub than invincible alpha male, Michael DeSanta is in many ways the perfect GTA hero. Rockstar is known for showcasing the lives of normal guys in nasty situations, but unlike some of its previous heroes, Michael feels less like a victim of circumstance and more like a victim of his own stupidity. Like so many Hollywood stories of the washed-up, middle-aged American male, Michael's is one of a frustrated jock whose vision for the future was shattered when his football dreams evaporated. Despite the fact that a lot of his failure can be blamed squarely on his own bad attitude, Michael has a chip on his shoulder about never getting to live his version of the American dream, and he turns to a life of crime when his pro sports aspirations don't pan out. Sadly for him, he's an even worse criminal than he is an athlete. He lands himself in prison twice before his 20th birthday, but through sheer dumb persistence managed to find some meager success as a criminal mastermind, until his most spectacular failure, where he leads his crew into a horribly botched bank robbery that ends in a bloody shootout. And as the story later reveals, it turns out Michael can't even do betrayal right. While it's hard not to feel a little sorry for Michael when we see him playing second fiddle in his own life, it gets a lot easier when you realise it's not only his own fault, but he's basically a terrible father, husband, and friend. Michael is what you get when you mix criminal burnout with criminally stupid, then toss in an advanced case of dad bod and a broken marriage. The American dream as viewed through the oily, cracked mirror of a grimy strip club, which, coincidentally, is where Michael met his lovely wife.
You call it whatever you want to call it. I really don't care.
Desmond's story is one of wasted potential. It started when he was 16, the son of a deadly, highly trained assassin who prepared his son to take up the fight for freedom and the right for humanity to choose its own future. But instead of using that training to battle the Templars and secure the destiny of humanity, Desmond opted for the life of a teenage runaway and server at a New York City dive bar. Only after being kidnapped and forced into an animus by the Templar and subsequently saved by the organisation he turned his back on did Desmond decide to do the right thing, and even then he made a tremendous mess of it. After a lengthy struggle to locate a single lost artifact, Desmond first fatally stabs his partner, ensuring Kristen Bell's premature exit from the series, and then lapses into a coma, costing the Assassin's Brotherhood even more valuable time and resources in a desperate bid to revive him. And how does he reward their hard work? He allows himself to be tricked into unleashing an ancient precursor goddess intent on destroying humanity, and he has to sacrifice himself to stop her. Desmond's the prodigal son of the Assassin's Creed franchise, except that instead of bringing wealth and prosperity when he returns, he poisons the pets and burns down their house. Cole Phelps may be a terrible cop, but Ethan Thomas, the lead of the criminally underrated and extremely dark Condemned Criminal Origins, makes him look practically heroic by contrast. While Phelps is a bit of a screw-up, Ethan Thomas makes an art form of catastrophically botching even the simplest tasks. Condemned opens with Ethan and his fellow detectives on the trail of a serial killer called the Matchmaker. When they discover what they assume is his latest victim in a dark, abandoned building, Ethan tries to restore power at an electrical box, but instead manages to shock himself almost unconscious and lose his weapon. Later, he stumbles onto a mysterious figure that's stolen his weapon and not only gets himself thrown out of a window, but for good measure, gets several of his colleagues fatally shot. After that, the hits just keep on coming. Ethan makes a habit of getting himself ambushed and left to the tender mercy of the killers he's pursuing. At one point, chasing a lead at a rural farm, he gets bludgeoned over the head and winds up tied to a chair at the mercy of a Dexter-esque murderer who's been killing the serial killers Ethan has been serially failing to catch. And while the killer doesn't quite get around to finishing Ethan off, he does manage to rather graphically hack off one of his fingers. Perhaps appropriately, Ethan ends up turning into the supernatural force that's been plaguing the city he was tasked with defending. Sometimes the hero we get isn't the one we want, but the one we deserve, but we're not sure anyone deserves any of this lot. It's easy to pity them, of course, but bear in mind they brought this on themselves. Instead, let them serve as an example, a beacon to developers and players alike, a constant reminder that though we might feel sorry for them, no one wants to party with their tails. Did we miss some obvious boneheads? Are you deeply upset about the amount of shade we've thrown at your favourite Sonic character? Please let us know in the comments below, like this video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly shows and features.